So welcome to MongoDB plus CredHub equals secure by default. My name is Diana Esteves. I work over at Mongo. And with me is Peter Blum. He works over at Pivotal as a platform architect. So for today's agenda, we are going to walk through a developer's POC concept, right, using Spring. We're going to talk about what it takes to take a simple POC over to production. Then we're going to also cover what did we do, right? How did we push something over to production seamlessly? And finally, cover what we just talked about. All right, so for the POC, as a developer, I have a very simple task. My task is to store database events, right? These database events happen to be change streams generated by some other MongoDB deployment. And my job is to put a REST API in front of that and store those into Mongo, right? Why? Well, it might be for historical reasons, retention policies, or auditing. So my first step is to put together a Mongo database. And as a developer, I'm going to go ahead and deploy that in Atlas. So what is Atlas, right? So Atlas is a Mongo as a service offering, right? You can deploy clusters in the 3 major cloud providers. And the reason for that is because it's very easy for a developer to just go through a few clicks and deploy a cluster, right? So we like to think of Atlas as a collective wisdom. Also, because it's hosted by us, it means you have all of the best practices right off the bat. What that means is security cannot be disabled, right? You have IP whitelisting. If you so need to, you can also integrate with LDAP and other systems. So the idea here is that it's focused around the developer, right? So you free up a lot of the operational overhead. So let's go ahead and deploy an Atlas cluster. So this is my Atlas interface. And in here, I can just go ahead and build a cluster. It will walk me through the wizard and allow me to choose my cloud provider, right? So if my company likes GCP, I can just go ahead and deploy a cluster in a GCP and set up my regions and so on. So Atlas is a subscription-based model, which means you pay for what you use, right? So I can scale up and down my resources, right? So I could start off with something like a shared cluster, and then once I become more production-like, I can increase my cluster. So now to create a cluster, it will take roughly up to 10 minutes or so. So we're not going to go ahead and click create cluster, but we already have a couple of clusters here for sharing. So now that I've got my database put together, I need to talk to it, right? So my application needs a connection string. So I can get that from the interface here, right? So we're just going to go ahead and copy that. So now I've got my database out of the way. Now the next thing I need to do for my POC is put together a Spring application, of course. So the best way to get started is to go to start.spring.io. Here you can list all your dependencies, everything you need. And it generates a package that's almost ready to go, right? So that's exactly what we did. So let me walk you through the steps here. So in Spring Boot, we take advantage of these annotations, right? Very powerful. All it takes is less than 15 lines of code, and I can specify that this is a Spring Boot application. The next thing I need to do is I need to put together a class, right, where my events are going to get loaded, right, for displaying, for storing, right, all my typical CRUD operations. So this is just a very simple event class object. Finally, I need to put together a repository. In here, I'm also taking advantage, again, of these annotations, right? So that one single REST API annotation in Spring is capable of deploying a full REST API for me, right? I can do inserts, puts, gets, deletes, all with that simple annotation. So very powerful for creating POCs. Finally, I have to tell my application my connection string, right? So as you can imagine here, it's all plain text, it's exposed, right? It's in the config file. And here I paste my connection string. that's in Atlas. So we're going to go ahead and deploy it. So in the left hand here, we have our Spring application running. And we can go ahead and test it. So here I can just do the event endpoint. And then I can see in here I can see the events that I already have inserted in the application, right? So we have some kind of insert event, some kind of update event that took place somewhere else, and I'm merely collecting them here.
Seems like the demo gods are not with us.
All right. So with that in mind, right, very easy, very powerful. My POC is completely done. Everyone is very happy. Now, thanks to MongoDB Atlas and Spring Boot, I was able to put together my demo in a few hours, right? But now somebody else comes in and asks to push it to production.
I'm not asking to push it to production. You're the developer. You're supposed to ask me. But I'm not going to let you push it to production. Guess what, hon? You can't push it to production because I don't like those credentials. I don't like that they're in the URI. I don't like that you don't tell me where they're stored. I don't like that you don't tell me how you've gotten them. I don't like to, because you don't know how long they're valid for. And I don't like it because you don't know how to rotate them. So fix it.
I will. Where is my make it secure annotation? We don't have that.
So what we can do, and what we have done, is we can build a service broker. So it's been a really, a service broker, for those of you that already know, is a very powerful abstraction away from services. In this case, we're building an abstraction away from MongoDB Atlas. So I work for Pivotal. We have a bunch of service brokers for a bunch of different services. If you're if you use Spring Cloud, right? We have the Spring Cloud service broker. And so in this case, we decided to put together an Atlas service broker. And an Atlas service broker can solve all of those questions that we had before. So we can explicitly tell our security admins, right, hey, we know where those credentials are stored. Hey, we know how to get them, right? They were generated for us. So I don't even know what they are, neither do you, neither does nobody. The only one that knows what the credential is CredHub. And we'll talk a little bit about CredHub. How long are they valid for? Well, that can be configurable up to your actual security admins themselves, right? And then how do we go ahead and rotate them? So we can have a defined process for actually going into the application and changing those credentials without going into the application and changing the credential, right? So actually externalizing that configuration and rotating them. Two simple commands to do that, something we call CF unbind and CF bind. And this is Diana in the middle, by the way. She's really excited and happy.
Yes.
And so this service broker, Diana and I both put together. You can find it on GitHub. It's on under her repo, Esteves MongoDB Atlas Service Broker. We're love to have some pull requests. There's some things that we'd love to continue to add in there, but feel free to check it out if you're looking to use Atlas. So kind of jump into it a little bit. What does the service broker actually do? So the service broker, as a developer, right? If this is Diana, she wants to go ahead and get Atlas. So what she's going to do is she's going to go and talk to the service broker. The service broker is going to then create a credential, right? In this case, it's a password that it's creating. And it's storing it and then sending it off to Atlas. And notice all along this flow, Diana has never known about the credential. So CredHub creates the credential, passes it back to the service broker. The service broker passes the credential on to MongoDB Atlas, where then the database gets created. And now, Diana can go ahead and, in this case, CF push her microservice. So, that Spring Boot application that she built earlier, she can go and push that to PaaS. She can containerize it, put it on PKS. She could even add some functions in there, right? And use that as a function instead of a microservice. And now, all throughout the whole entire way here, there has been no interaction, no transferring of credentials. The entire credential has been stored only in CredHub in their encrypted data store. So.
All right, time for production. So now I am taking my simple POC and I am pushing that over to a PCF environment.
I'm only going to let you do it if you use a service broker.
Yes, sir. So here I am in my PCF environment. And you will see that I have all my services. And let's go ahead and create a new service. So instead of going via Atlas to deploy a cluster, the service broker is going to do it on my behalf. Right? So what I'm going to do here is add a new service. And I'm just going to, it's going to be an Atlas service broker. So instead of navigating through configurations and having total control over that, in here we've already predefined what the plan should be, right? So there's a development environment or a custom in which you can do a lot more advanced configurations, such as replica sets, sharded clusters, and that sort of thing. In this case, we're just going to go ahead with a simple AWS
Can you
deployment.
tell me more about the custom? As a security guy, I don't want to allow anybody to send anything. So how do I disable custom?
Right. So in PCF, when you have a service broker, you have the option to enable and disable these plans. So if your company only likes to be in the AWS ecosystem, you can go ahead and disable the GCP dev option, and so on.
Awesome. I only like.
All right. So in this case, we're going to go ahead and just give it a random name and create it. Now, as soon as I hit create, that's going to talk via the Atlas API interface to Atlas and deploy a cluster. So we're actually going to go ahead and create it. And now let's come back to my Atlas interface. And you see here that a new cluster is now being created. So this is going to take a little bit of time. So we are going to instead use an already created cluster to bind my application. So I've got my service. And now I go to my application here. So it's already bind. So I'm going to bind my application to my Atlas service, right? So all of this is happening behind the scenes. So now I select my Peter test here, and I bind it. So what's happening behind the scenes is this binding command is actually first talking to CredHub, generating a 32-character password, and is sending that over to Atlas to then create a user. Those connection string and user settings are being passed to the service broker. The service broker is storing those credentials inside of CredHub. So my application has no awareness of what these credentials are. And I can show you. So if I go over to my settings, right, I am going to reveal my environment. And as you can see here, right, whereas if this were not used in the service broker, you will see my URI connection string user password. Instead, what I have is a reference to where those credentials live.
When I just create a service, is there any credentials that are used if it's not bound? So there's only credentials created when a binding happens, right?
Right.
So when she created the service, there is no actual credential there. So that's a big point, right? There is no orphan credentials sitting out there. You can create 300 different services, but nobody will have access. They're only created when you bind. And the same thing goes for unbind. So when you unbind a credential, the credentials are deleted. So it's a great way to actually generate and continue to rotate your credentials, right? You can actually bind and then unbind and then bind again and you get a different credential. Bind and unbind and you get a new credential. And that's a great security policy, something that at Pivotal we talk about all the time, is being able to rotate your credentials. It's very important, right? If you leak a credential, if you can just go ahead and recreate that credential, then who cares if it's leaked? Who cares who has it? It doesn't matter anymore because now I have a brand new credential.
Right. So now my application is in production. So Peter, talk a little bit more about what happened behind the scenes.
So it's awesome to see that you're using CredHub. Let's talk a little bit about CredHub. So if you've watched any of my other talks that I've done with Scott, who's in the back there, we love talking about CredHub. CredHub is awesome. It can do many different things for us. A lot of people like to think about CredHub and compare it to Vault. And CredHub is really it's a data center-wide credential management system. So when I say that, what do I actually mean? Well, it can generate credentials for you, right? So it's not just a place to store a credential. It's actually a place to go and generate it for you and store it and encrypt it, right? Big difference there. So it can generate any type of credentials here, password certificates, JSONs, RSA, SSH keys, CAs, certs, all of those. And in order to interface with CredHub, it's got to be secure, right? Because if you can just use HTTP, grabbing my credential out of CredHub with HTTP, anybody can get in the middle, right, and see my credential. So the only protocols that CredHub supports is mutual TLS or OAuth 2. OAuth 2 is done usually through UAA. It's a security interface that Pivotal offers. And then, a really big piece of CredHub is the integrations. So, no matter how great of a security credential management system you have, if it's a pain in the butt for your developers to use as an organization, they're not going to use it. And so, CredHub is, with Cloud Foundry, it's been integrated for quite a while, where it's almost seamless for the developer. Same thing with Bosch. So if you're used to Bosch, it's already integrated there seamlessly as well. And then I have a talk later on that'll actually describe how I seamlessly integrated it into Kubernetes so that developers, when they're using Kubernetes, don't have to understand what CredHub is and how to deal with CredHub. So overall, CredHub is really the solution that we see at Pivotal to rotating, repairing, and recreating all of our credentials in the system. Awesome. So let's take a look at how we actually use and install the service broker. So when we're installing the service broker, it's just like anything else that you install in PCF. It's a tile. So to the operations team that runs your PCF, they would go down and they would download the tile, and then they would go ahead and upload the tile to something we call PCF Ops Manager. Inside of PCF Ops Manager, a little different than if you're familiar with Mongo Ops Manager. That threw me for a loop when I first started using Mongo. But a little different. Once you upload the tile, there's only 3 things that have to be configured. So what they are is something, it's called the username. So the username, just like anything else, it's the user you log into in Atlas. The second thing that you're going to need is an API key. Simple way, instead of just a password, it's a simple way to authenticate you with the Atlas service. At the same time, make it very easy to revoke, right? You can just go back in and revoke that key at any time. And finally, the group ID or project ID. So that's actually where those MongoDB clusters will be stored inside of Atlas. And once you have all those 3 things configured, you can go and apply changes. And then you'll have your service broker inside of PCF ready for your developers to use. So this slide might be an eye chart for you, but I think this really describes overall what we're trying to do here. And so, where do you as an organization and, as a developer, where do you want to be, right? Do you want to be secure? But do you want to be secure with having to deal with, interfacing with a specific client? Or do you want to be secure with just, interfacing with just an environment variable, right? And so let's walk through this a little bit. So let's pretend that we're not using the MongoDB Atlas Service Broker, and we're not using PCF. Maybe we just run the SpringBoot application directly on a VM or inside of a container. So we need to get our Atlas credentials inside of that environment. How do we do that? Well, an operator goes out to, as you saw Diana do in the beginning, they go out to the GUI, they get their credential, and then they paste that credential into an email, and then I get my credential and I paste it into my application environment. All right, if we think about that workflow, that's great. So I have the credential in the environment. So if anybody SSHs into that VM, they can see that credential. So that's a leak. And also, if anybody was able to see the credential in my email or anywhere along that hand passing, right, of that credential, that would be a leak as well. But the good news with that solution is I don't have to change my code, right? If it's a 12-factor application, I'm already getting the configuration from the environment, and great, I don't have to change anything. So that's really kind to your developers, but from a security posture, not that kind. Now let's introduce PCF. So we're still running without the service broker, but we're running on PCF. Great, you can now store your credentials inside the environment. And PCF will actually interpolate those for you on runtime. We'll get into that a little bit later in another CredHub talk. That's awesome. But how did you get that CredHub into the environment? How did you get that credential from MongoDB Atlas into CredHub? Well, again, there had to be some passing of the credential. Somebody had to go log into CredHub and store that credential in there. So again, not that great from a security posture. And now, since that credential is stored in CredHub for me, I have to refactor my code to actually create a CredHub client and go ahead and authenticate with CredHub and pull that credential out. So again, not that great for my developer productivity. They're going to have to go learn a brand new API interface. Not that great. But now, let's pretend that we're going to use the service broker. Maybe let's not pretend. Let's all use it. Everybody in the room should use it. So we're going to use the MongoDB Atlas service broker, but we're not going to use PCF. Not advised. Credentials in the environment. Nope, there's no credentials in the environment. Again, I'm using the CredHub URL in the environment. So good. We're good from a security posture. Well, we're using the service broker. So the service broker provisioned the cluster for me. It got the credentials into the cluster for me. No manual transferring of credentials, so there's no security leaks, right? It's all done across HTTPS, so there's no man-in-the-middle attacks. Everything should be pretty good. So from a security posture, I feel great. From a developer point of view, I still have to go ahead and interpolate those CredHub credentials. So I have to go and log into CredHub. I have to get the credential out. I have to learn a brand new interface. Not that great from a developer point of view. Now, if you use a service broker and you're using PCF, much advised, the credentials are not in the environment. They're stored in the environment as a URL, as we saw earlier when you showed us the URL. And the whole thing was automated, right? There was no manual hand passing of credentials. And as a developer, I don't ever have to create a client because at runtime, PCF goes ahead and says, hey, I see a CredHub credential in there. Let me inject that into the container for you at runtime. So great. I don't have to do anything as a developer, and from a security posture, I'm pretty darn good. So I want to leave this at the end of the talk with, where do you want to be in your security journey, right? We need more and more service brokers to be created, and Mongo's the first one, as a partnered service broker that I know of that's actually integrated with CredHub. It's awesome to see that. By the way, you want to be this Diana, not this one. So any questions, Q&A? Anybody? Questions? I don't know how we're doing on time. But,
We're good.
Okay. Sure.
So I know you guys said this is integrated with Atlas. What if you have just on-prem Mongo? Do you guys have a service broker created for potentially an on-prem?
Right, so for an on-prem solution, right, so we showcase the MongoDB Atlas Service Broker, which means it's on the cloud, right? So for an on-prem solution, we actually do have an Ops Manager tile as well as a Mongo tile, right? So you still have to have the MongoDB Ops Manager, and it also automates your Mongo deployments on-prem. So that part does not yet have CredHub integration, but there is a tile available today that you can go download from the Pivotal website.
But you guys are working on the CredHub integration?
So that does not currently have CredHub integration.
Sure, but you guys are working on it. No,
I'll have to see with that team and see what they're up to.
Come on, Mongo. Do it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No? Sure.
When you restart the application to get the credentials, will there be downtime for the service?
Yes. So let me just repeat the question. Is there a downtime when you restart the application for the new binding? Right? So every time I unbind and bind something, there is, an outage, right? I'm restarting the container. And that's very true, right? So, at Pivotal, what we would, consider is doing a blue-green deployment, right? So having that other credential, going ahead and creating a new credential and then binding it to the new version of the service. And then when you're ready, you can take down the other one and unbind it, right? You can bind a service multiple times. So you can actually bind a single database to 2 different applications. So you can have it bound to your blue and your green. And then once you're ready to go, you can, switch your containers over and unbind, and now you're all set, off and running, right? If you're familiar with Spring Config Server as well, you can go ahead and put your credential in there as well, and then you can actually just refresh the environment without ever having to restart the environment, right? So, yep, awesome. All right, cool. So definitely check out these other talks. You know, I didn't bring this up, but you know, we've done some integration with Kubernetes and CredHub. So I'd love to get you over there. We're also, Scott Frederick and I, we're doing a CredHub talk about just sort of overall how CredHub works inside the platform, and a little bit deeper into CredHub itself. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.